Europe is about compromise. It's about working together. Now, the European institutions aren't perfect. The European Commission, the Parliament, there's bureaucracy, there's a certain amount of corruption, there's lots of things that could be done better. But you know what? In all the years I've worked in Europe, in the industry, in government, and now in conservation, there's a lot of good work that's been done. Let me just give you some examples. The ban on seal products came about because people in Europe brought European governments together on an ethical basis to stop the importation of products from Labrador and Newfoundland that were basically from the killing, horrible killing of hundreds of thousands of seals. Okay, that's a massive, massive step forward. We have a ban on international whaling in terms of Europe because of the agreements that were reached between member state governments. We have a ban on cosmetic testing for animals that took over a decade to negotiate, but has made a huge difference in reducing animal testing in Europe and is having an influence around the world. We have a ban on leg hold trap for animals. We have a ban on drift nets use. And we have a temporary ban on the use of neonicotinoid insecticides, which we know could have a very negative impact on our pollinators. Now, all of that came about because of compromise, because of a long-term view that European politicians have to take. I've worked with politicians of all parties, Conservative, Liberal, Labour politicians. You go in to see a minister, and the first thing they're worried about is their next election and what polls will look like. And they have to take decisions in a very short time frame. And mostly they'll look at it from an economic perspective. And wildlife and the natural environment will be at the bottom of the list. The one thing that Europe's good for is taking the longer view. Take the politics out of it. Let's listen to what people have to say in the European Parliament. Let's consider the long-term view that groups like NGOs around this particular square today can influence over. That's a good thing, and in my view it must continue. I know people out there quite rightly say to me, what about bullfighting? What about foie gras? What about live animal exports? None of those things are right. But we're not going to necessarily make them better if we're outside the European Union. And remember this, if you come out next Thursday, you will make that decision. That's rightfully the choice you have to make. There will be consequences. And the politicians that are leading this debate, believe me, do not have wildlife and conservation at the top of their list. And if this economy takes a sink because of the problems that we have, because of the decision that's been taken, you will cut back more regulation, you will cut back more control, and you will try and drive economic growth into the economy at all costs. And that cost will come at the cost of our wildlife. And I'll leave you with one thought when it comes back to badgers. Because when we started the debate about badgers, it was all about badgers in Britain and about protection of the species here. We've recently set up Eurobadger because we wanted to bring badger protection groups together from across Europe, from Ireland, from Holland, from Germany, from Scotland. And we want to protect this species from illegal hunting, persecution, from farmers saying it should be culled because it might spread TB, or as in France recently, they should be culled because they're damaging our crops. And what we begin to learn is actually the European Union has leverage in this debate. They spend 30 million euro of European taxpayers' money every year in the British government coffers to deal with TB in this country. That is leverage that we have. We've met with the European Commission recently. We've talked with the European Parliament MEPs. We know that that 30 million is terribly important to Liz Truss, but we're not spending it in the best way. We're saying to the European Commission, we want more leverage so we can make sure, for example, that money is spent to give farmers access to gamma interferon blood testing, which we know if you use it alongside skin tests, you can find more accurately where the TB-infected cattle are in your herds. And what we've seen in Wales, where they have been funding this programme, is that it's working. The Welsh Government announced this week that actually the new herd incidence, that's the outbreaks of TB in the herd, has dropped by 14% over the last 12 months. Wouldn't you all welcome that? Yes. But it's a significant step forward. Over 94.6% of the herd in Wales is now TB-free. They have not killed any badgers under any official cull to achieve that. Wouldn't you welcome that? Yes. And the European money that's in that pipeline can be driven to give British farmers in England access to gamma interferon as well. They want it. They tell me at the Badger Trust they want it. We will make sure, working with the European Union, that they get access to it. They find where those TB reactors are, they remove them, and they get this disease under control without having to kill our wildlife for no reason. Wouldn't you agree that's the right way forward? So, if you ask me from a personal perspective, when I weigh all of that up, I think next Thursday, I know I will be voting to stay in. It's your decision what you do. And I'm not talking on behalf of the charities I represent here today. It's an individual view, but it is something that I want you to consider very, very carefully. And remember one more thing too. The European Union is about compromise. The European Union is about working together, and it's about keeping peace and economic prosperity in our time. Many of us take that for granted. There'll be people in this city who lived through the last Blitz, who remember still the war that went through and the conflicts in Europe. It's easy for us to bicker today about our political future, but let's just think about the investment that people made to make this continent more peaceful and more secure. And let's just think about what we can do to maintain and protect our environment and our wildlife, and we as a nation proudly working with others to build a better world for people and a better world for animals. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dominic.